Muhktar Bey. There is a lot that could be said about this powerful Caitiff, who managed to land himself as the Prince of Cairo. Some see him as a portent of Gehenna, the vampiric apocalypse. Others see him as a beacon of hope, something to aspire to, something to grasp onto, to elevate themselves out of the blooded bastard status that all clanless tend to have. But what they don't realize is the darkness that lies underneath. Tonight we will be discussing this powerful Caitiff. Tonight we will be discussing the Mamluk Muhktar Bey.
Muhktar Bey was Mamluk. Roughly translated as one who is owned, Mamluks were non-Arab, ethnically diverse, mostly Turkic, Caucasian, Eastern, and Southeastern European, enslaved mercenaries, slave soldiers, and freed slaves, who were assigned high-ranking military and administrative duties, serving the ruling Arab and Ottoman dynasties in the Muslim world. Born in the early 1310s, Muhktar Bey was later sold as a child and trained to kill as a youth. He came as an adult to Cairo to serve in Mamluk mercenary warrior. Turkish by birth, he willingly and gladly accepted his role in Fatimid Egypt, a rising power in the Islamic world. He stood out from many of his companions, and although skilled in arms, weaponry, and combat, he possessed a keen mind and demonstrated his leadership ability quite early in his career. His potential did not go unnoticed by those above him, a trend that would follow him into his unlife. He rose through the ranks of the Mamluks with the full intention of entering the government after he had dutifully fulfilled his servitude. When he vanished, no one would have thought of supernatural interference. A full decade went by, and in 1354, Muhktar Bey would re-emerge as a fully fledged Knight. He would then, in an act unheard of, present himself to Antonius, then true Prince of Cairo. Why would this act be unheard of, you might say? Because he would claim no sire, nor would any kindred claim him as child. He was Caitiff. He was of the clanless. Information on the years between his disappearance from mortal life and his reemergence to the unlife is completely shrouded in mystery. But one thing we do know is that he was sired by someone going by the name the wife of the tiger and the snake. An enraged Antonius directed his two guards to tend to the clanless bastard. No Caitiff would be suffered in many domains, especially one who would be so brazen as to just walk in and announce themselves as if they were equals. But Antonius was stunned as Muhktar Bey dispatched the would-be executioners with ease. Muhktar would clean the blood off of his blade and would reintroduce himself and then offer his own services to the shocked Ventru. Impressed, Antonius decided to make him his bodyguard. Any good Ventru knows the use of a good tool. Any Ventru always has the use of a good hammer or blade. Muhktar Bey served Antonius faithfully, and in a surprising turn of events, Antonius grew equally loyal to his new vassal. So devoted he became, in fact, that some question Muhktar's hold over Antonius. And in time, Muhktar was more than his bodyguard. He had become his right-hand man, his seneschal, if you would. He would learn the ins and outs of Antonius's operation and methods of leadership, which would serve Muhktar very well in the later years. The year 1406. During the thralls and darkness of the night, lupines, or Setites, depending on who you ask, invaded the chambers of Antonius, the Ventru Prince, seeking to destroy him, to put him into final death. Muhktar Bey was gripped by a terrible fear and fled, leaving his master to die. Ashamed and disgusted of his own cowardice, he blamed his clanless lineage for this and prepared to venture into the sun in disgrace. Though it is entirely possible that his fear was something not of his own creation. A trained Mamluk warrior from childhood would never fear laying their life down to their master. Though Muhktar would be the only witness to these events, putting him in a precarious situation. Antonius and all those who defended him were dead, all except for Muhktar Bey. It was then that some of the kindred that had high positions of standing within Cairo approached Muhktar to take control of the city in Antonius's stead. Muhktar's close relationship with Antonius and his skills put him at the overall best choice to become the new prince of Cairo. Heavy-hearted, he accepted, believing that they would see the error of their choice in time. Muhktar felt he was no leader, and his inability to practice master should have been enough to prove his unworthiness to hold power. Yet the others insisted. Though this newfound leadership would not be free from strife, some murmured of fragments of the Book of Nod, which spoke of a Caitiff prince coming to power being a sign of the end times, a sign of Gehenna. Many kindred believed in what the Caitiff represented, and in turn feared them and wished their destruction. Muhktar Bey would rule Cairo as a free city, without pledging any allegiance to any one of the great sects, not the Camarilla, the Anarchs, or the Sabbat. A kindred city for which every clan and heritage within its boundaries were accepted, except for the Giovanni, whom had made an ancient agreement with one of the last Cappadocians. He takes the title of prince, not as a title of the Camarilla, but merely as a title that most kindred worldwide would know and understand what the meaning of being called the prince is overall. Despite various doomsayers that called for Muhktar Bey's destruction, he nonetheless was able to reign in the desperate factions of Cairo, and he earned respect, as his rule was steady, and despite many of the changes in the political winds, he was able to create a foundation and stability that Cairo had not seen in quite some time. He negotiated with the Banu Hakim, which could not often be done, and he wisely kept the Setites at arm's length, despite them operating within the territory. But despite his long rule, he still feels unworthy for his perceived betrayal in 1406 that led to Antonius's death. He chafes under his responsibilities, and he fears that he will lose control at some point in the future. At an unknown point within his rule, Muhktar Bey was visited by an ancient Cainite calling himself Al-Muntakim. Al-Muntakim claimed to be a true Bruja, if you believe such tales. Muntakim took it upon himself to educate Muhktar Bey on the legends and stories of Gehenna. And of course, Muhktar Bey, who was often lauded as proof of such things, fed into these tales wholeheartedly. He listened with bated unbreath as Al-Muntakim described the so-called third generation, the antediluvians, the fury that these veritable blood gods could put into the world. And he also listened to what Al-Muntakim had to say on how it could be averted. This, of course, was a ritual in which a great many Caitiff were to be sacrificed. In doing so, it would avert events of Gehenna, at the very least, for Muhktar Bey, al-Muntakim, and those close to them. At least that is what Muntakim told Muhktar Bey. In modern nights, Muhktar Bey still rules over Cairo as its prince. The city does not claim any sect. It still remains independent amongst many factions within the area. But one thing Muhktar Bey has deigned to do. In turn, al-Muntakim told him of the tales of Gehenna and the sacrifice that must be made. Muhktar Bey made a worldwide pledge for all Caitiff who would come to Cairo would be protected and would be given guidance and hospitality. Cairo had been opened up by Muhktar Bey as a safe haven for the clanless amongst Cainites throughout the entire world. All Cainites that arrived were to find their homes in the Isle of Girza, within the Nile. That is where the Caitiff would be placed. And this was by design, for al-Muntakim's ritual had been set on that island. The ritual parameters were set around that place. And when Gehenna comes, if it comes, and Troil rises to devour all of the Bruja, the ritual will be enacted, and all of the Caitiff on that island, within it, including Muhktar Bey, will be sacrificed and consumed by al-Muntakim to give him the power needed to face Troil and destroy her. For the ancient grudge of the true Bruja and Troil's Bruja still burned passionately within al-Muntakim's heart, despite the stoicism, the cold logic, and the philosophical bents that the true Bruja touted. The anger that burned within al-Muntakim was very much reminiscent of Troil's passion, and he would sacrifice 1,000,000 Caitiff if it would lead him to his revenge. Unfortunately, the time of Gehenna is still not yet known, and al-Muntakim waits patiently for such things as more Caitiff gather in Cairo under Muhktar Bey's guidance. Muhktar Bey still not the wiser as to the designs of al-Muntakim. An unfortunate fate for a Caitiff that had managed to elevate themselves to such stature, status, and power, only to be regulated to become another tool in the jihad by some other war-crazed ancient. But Muhktar Bey still is active. He is still there, and he is still very powerful personally. He is not one that you would want to face in combat. He is not one that you would want to challenge openly. He still has power, and should he find himself in a situation where he cannot find his way out of, it is sure that al-Muntakim would be there to back him up, as Muhktar Bey is the horn of salvation, as it were. He is the tool that Muntakim is using for his own personal gain. Those two are veritably in a position to remain where they are, untoppled and uncontested, until the end times, should they ever fall upon us, or until the Second Inquisition, perhaps, finds their way into Cairo.
And that was Muhktar Bey, the Caitiff Prince of Cairo. You kind of got a twofer in this one, as I covered al-Muntakim as well. There wasn't a whole lot of details or history that could be found on this important Vampiric VIP, so I was able to fit everything I could find into this video along with Muhktar Bey. I hope you all enjoyed this. I will see you in the next video real soon. Please like and subscribe, as I would greatly, greatly appreciate the support. And remember, nothing good ever happens after dark.